WWE just announced Solo Sikoa's version of the Bloodline has already been formed. However, Roman Reigns is not part of it, indicating a major shift in the power structure of the Bloodline faction. The new Bloodline is currently operating independently of Roman. While the focus is on Zilla Fatu's upcoming debut and support for Jacob Fatu, there is no confirmation or involvement of Roman Reigns in this storyline so far. This marks a significant departure from earlier eras where Roman Reigns was at the center of Bloodline drama. There is speculation about a potential War Games match at Survivor Series involving Jacob Fatu's Bloodline versus Solo Sikoa's Bloodline. This could have future implications for Roman Reigns, especially if WWE plans to involve him later in the feud or as a surprise return. In this update, Roman Reigns is not currently involved in the new Bloodline storyline. Solo Sikoa has formed his own Bloodline faction, and Zilla Fatu is preparing to debut to help Jacob Fatu. While there's speculation around a War Games showdown, Roman Reigns' status remains unmentioned, implying he may return later, or is being intentionally left out for a future twist. What if I told you the Bloodline, WWE's most dominant faction of the last decade, just imploded without a single word from Roman Reigns? That's not a hypothetical. That's real. That's now. On the latest episode of Raw, the unthinkable happened. Zilla Fatu, the son of the legendary Umaga, made his long-awaited WWE debut, not in silence, not with diplomacy, and certainly not with respect for the new regime. No, Zilla came with fire in his eyes and a purpose etched in every movement, to make a statement. And he didn't come alone. He came to stand by Jacob Fatu, his cousin, his brother-in-arms, and possibly the new spiritual leader of a reborn bloodline. Together, they didn't just appear. They attacked. They made it clear, the war for the soul of the bloodline is on. Their target? Solo Sikoa, the man who once stood quietly behind Roman Reigns and is now running his own version of the family dynasty like a rogue general. But here's the twist, Roman Reigns is nowhere to be seen. No entrance music. No tribal chief sermon. No explanation. And that silence speaks louder than anything Zilla or Solo could say on a mic. For months, fans speculated whether the Bloodline storyline had run its course. After WrestleMania 40, when Roman Reigns lost his title to Cody Rhodes, many thought the faction would quietly dissolve. Instead, it split like an atom, and now, we're dealing with the nuclear fallout. WWE just confirmed it officially, Solo Sikoa has formed his own version of the Bloodline. This isn't a teaser or a fan theory. It's real. The era of Roman's singular control is over, for now. Let that sink in. The most dominant faction of the modern WWE era, possibly in company history, has fragmented, and it's happening without the architect in the building. This is more than a creative shift. It's a cultural pivot in wrestling storytelling. Where Solo represents control through fear and calculated strikes, Zilla and Jacob represent chaos with a mission, a return to something raw, untamed, and maybe even more dangerous than what Roman ever built. To understand what just happened, you need to rewind. The Bloodline wasn't just a faction, it was a legacy project. Roman Reigns elevated himself by pulling his family into orbit. Jimmy and Jey Uso. Paul Heyman. Sami Zayn, briefly. Solo Sikoa. He played the tribal chessboard perfectly. He turned family into soldiers. He made the crowd believe they were watching not just matches, but rituals. But over time, that loyalty became coercion. The Bloodline grew more brittle with every crack in the foundation. Starting with Jey's defiance, Jimmy's confusion, and Solo's cold silence. Now? Solo has flipped the board. And Zilla Fatu just stomped on it. Zilla Fatu's entrance wasn't just a debut. It was a declaration. The lights dimmed. The crowd buzzed. Jacob Fatu stood alone in the ring, surrounded by Solo's new faction, Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, and Sikoa himself. Outnumbered, outgunned, and on the verge of defeat. And then... boom. The music hit. A war drum remix, a callback to Umaga's haunting entrance theme. The camera shook. The crowd erupted like they knew exactly who it was, even if they'd never seen him step foot in a WWE ring. Zilla charged the ring with no hesitation, taking out Tama with a brutal clothesline and hitting Loa with a Samoan spike that had Umaga's spirit in it. Solo Sikoa stood stunned. For the first time since Roman's exile, he looked unsure. Jacob smiled. The message was clear: Jacob Fatu isn't alone anymore. He's not just a threat. He's a movement. If you're a casual viewer, you might see this as just another faction fight. A cool surprise. A good pop. But here's what you're missing if you think that's all it is. This moment is the fracture point of a story that WWE has been building for 4 years. Zilla's return isn't about spotlight. It's about identity. It's about who owns the legacy of the Inoue family in modern wrestling. Roman ruled through storytelling and dominance. Solo seeks order through force. Jacob and Zilla? They bring the legacy of war, chaotic, unfiltered, primal. And they're just getting started. Roman Reigns isn't tweeting. He's not cutting cryptic backstage promos. He's not even rumored to show up at Money in the Bank. And yet, his presence is felt in every frame of this new war. The silence is deliberate. It's a storytelling device, and WWE is using it masterfully. Think about it. In every major civil war, in fiction or in reality, there's a void of leadership that creates chaos. It's not just that Solo stepped up. It's that Roman stepped away. And now, we're seeing what happens when the throne is empty, and 2 generals believe it belongs to them. This isn't about following the tribal chief anymore. It's about becoming one. There's already buzz: a potential War Games match at Survivor Series, Jacob Fatu's Bloodline versus Solo Sikoa's Bloodline. If that happens, it will be one of the most explosive, emotionally layered matches WWE has ever booked. And still, no Roman. Will he emerge to restore order? To choose a side? Or to burn both versions of the Bloodline to the ground and start from scratch? Here's the truth: WWE is planting seeds. Zilla's debut was just the first. Jacob's alliance is the next. Solo's fury is building. The audience is holding its breath. This isn't just a fight between cousins. This is a fight for the soul of the dynasty. In this video, we're going to break it all down: every clue, every move, every moment, how Solo Sikoa formed his own bloodline and what that means for WWE's power structure. Who Jacob Fatu is and why he might be the most dangerous man WWE has signed in years. Why Zilla Fatu's debut was more than a pop, it was the start of a factional revolution. The looming shadow of Roman Reigns, and why he might be waiting to strike when it hurts the most. What a Survivor Series War Games showdown would mean for WWE's future. So buckle up. Because if you thought the Bloodline story was over, you've been watching the wrong show. It's easy to forget where this all started. With the Bloodline now fractured and war looming between cousins, brothers, and factions, we have to rewind. This story wasn't born in chaos. It was built methodically, piece by piece, by a man who saw the future, and took it. Roman Reigns didn't just create the Bloodline. He constructed a mythology. It wasn't a stable. It wasn't a team. It was a religion. And at its peak, it wasn't just dominating WWE, it was the beating heart of it. Every story orbiting WWE's main roster over the past 4 years eventually found itself pulled into Roman's gravity. But how did we get here? Before the cracks, before Solo took control, before Zilla made his thunderous debut, there was an era of pure dominance. To understand the war ahead, we have to understand what was lost. It began at SummerSlam 2020. Roman returned after months off, his physique leaner, his presence more focused. There was no crowd. Just silence, screens, and a thunderous spear. But even without fans, you could feel it. This wasn't the same Roman. He was colder, more calculating. He didn't come back to entertain. He came to conquer. Paul Heyman appeared at his side the following week. That sealed it. Roman Reigns was no longer the big dog. He was the tribal chief. Over the next months, Roman steamrolled through challengers. Jey Uso was his first target, not because Jey was a threat, but because he was family. Roman knew something the rest of us were only beginning to realize: to lead, you must first make your blood kneel. Jey resisted. He fought with heart, with pride, but Roman broke him. Not just physically, but spiritually. Hell in a Cell 2020 wasn't a match. It was an execution of ego. Jey said, "I quit not just for survival, but because Roman forced him to see who the real head of the table was." From there, the bloodline was formed through pressure, submission, and strategic silence. Jimmy Uso returned next. He tried to resist, but fell in line just like Jey. The twin bond, the loyalty, it all came second to Roman's vision. Then came Solo Sikoa. Not through persuasion. Not through betrayal. But summoned, almost like a weapon. Clash at the Castle 2022. Drew McIntyre had Roman beat. The crowd was ready for the upset. But Solo debuted and tipped the scales. Just like that, Roman's kingdom gained its most dangerous enforcer. Solo wasn't like Jimmy or Jey. He didn't need validation. He didn't speak unless spoken to. He didn't question the plan. He just executed it. With Paul Heyman playing the master manipulator, the faction began to evolve. Sami Zayn became the honorary yes, an outsider trying to earn respect in a kingdom built on blood. For a while, it worked. The chemistry was real. The moments were legendary. But eventually, the seams began to show. Sami's betrayal at the Royal Rumble 2023 was the first real crack. It wasn't shocking, it was inevitable. When your loyalty is built on fear, rebellion is just a matter of time. What surprised fans was Jey's hesitation. He didn't jump to Roman's side. He walked away. It was the first time Roman looked vulnerable. That moment split the crowd, and for good reason. People weren't just invested in Roman versus Sami. They were emotionally tangled in the family dynamics. It wasn't good guy versus bad guy. It was older brother versus younger cousin. Love versus control. Fear versus pride. By WrestleMania 39, Roman had regained control. He beat Cody Rhodes. He stood tall again. But the cracks were visible. The Usos lost the tag titles. Jey and Jimmy no longer saw eye to eye. And Roman couldn't keep the family glued together. Fast forward to SummerSlam 2023. Jey walked out. Not just on Roman, but on WWE. 4 months, he disappeared. Jimmy was broken. Solo became more aggressive. Paul Heyman looked more like a hostage than an advisor. Roman was still champion, but he was isolated. His tribe was fraying. By WrestleMania 40, it all came to a head. Cody defeated Roman. Clean. Definitive. The era ended, not with a betrayal, but with defeat. Roman walked away. No rematch. No address. Just absence. And in that silence, the war began. Solo Sikoa stepped into the void. But he didn't take a microphone and declare himself leader. He didn't call a summit. He simply started moving. He recruited Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. He began operating independently. He stopped checking in with Paul Heyman. He stopped referencing Roman Reigns at all. He wasn't continuing the bloodline. He was building his own. But that's the thing about taking something that isn't yours, it invites opposition. While Solo was constructing a new power structure, another storm was forming. Zilla Fatu. Unhinged, explosive, terrifying in the ring. He was everything Roman once was, but with a touch of madness. WWE had been sitting on his contract, waiting for the right time. That time arrived when Solo overstepped. when he declared the bloodline his without earning it. Jacob stepped in, not with a speech, but with violence. He didn't pledge allegiance to Roman. He didn't criticize Solo. He simply made it known that there was another branch of the family ready to fight for what they believe is theirs. But Jacob wasn't alone for long. Zilla Fatu's name had been whispered for months. Wrestling fans knew he was training. They knew he was preparing. But no one expected him to show up the way he did, explosive, unapologetic, and with one goal: destroy the counterfeit bloodline. The backdrop to all of this is important. We're not just watching a factional shift. We're watching a complete upheaval of WWE's most important storyline. Roman Reigns took years building this kingdom. Solo thinks it's his by inheritance. Jacob wants to burn it down and start again. And Zilla, he's here to make sure the past isn't erased. This isn't about titles. Not yet. This is about identity. When Roman started the bloodline, it was about respect, honor, legacy. Now, those values are being twisted, challenged, and repurposed. Solo believes respect comes from dominance. Jacob believes it comes from fearlessness. Zilla believes it comes from blood, loyalty, and retribution. And the fans? They're split. Some chant for Solo. Others scream for Jacob. The rest are just waiting for Roman to return. To choose. To fix this. Or maybe, to destroy everything he created. This is where we are now. The bloodline didn't implode in a single night. It decayed. Slowly. Quietly. Piece by piece. Until it collapsed under the weight of its own legend. What happens next isn't just another story. It's a new beginning. But make no mistake, this war has deep roots. And no matter who wins, someone's blood will stain the foundation it was all built on. For a long time, Solo Sikoa was seen as the quiet muscle in the background of the bloodline, dead-eyed, unshakable, Roman Reigns' final chess piece on the board. He wasn't there to talk. He wasn't there to pose. He was there to finish fights. A silent enforcer, called upon when the family needed to assert dominance. He rarely smiled. He never hesitated. And he didn't need validation. Roman pointed, Solo executed. But something shifted after WrestleMania 40. Roman Reigns walked away from the spotlight, and in doing so, left behind a vacuum that couldn't stay empty for long. The cracks in the family had already spread like spiderwebs across glass, Jay gone, Jimmy conflicted, Heyman uncertain. Roman wasn't there to hold it together anymore. And Solo didn't wait for permission. He moved. He moved like someone who had been watching, learning, calculating. Someone who understood that the man at the head of the table was no longer sitting in the chair. And someone who wasn't content to wait for him to return. When you grow up in a dynasty where strength is currency and silence is power, you learn to act, not ask. Solo Sikoa began quietly assembling his own faction. Not in the open. Not with declarations. He didn't cut promos calling himself the new head of the table. He didn't mimic Roman's cadence. He forged something colder. More brutal. More focused. His first recruits? The Gorillas of Destiny, Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa. No nonsense. No fluff. Just chaos wrapped in muscle. Known from their time in NJPW for their wild energy and tag team dominance, the Gorillas weren't just a good fit, they were a statement. This wasn't Roman's polished, cerebral crew. This was something raw. And that's what Solo wanted. Tama Tonga was first. The moment he showed up on SmackDown, blindsiding Kevin Owens, fans knew something had changed. The music was different. The body language was different. He wasn't here to be the next USO. He was here to back a new boss. Then came Tonga Loa, and with him, the confirmation, this wasn't an accident. This was a movement. Unlike Roman, who spent years cultivating fear and loyalty with speeches, slow burns, and championship leverage, Solo took a different approach. He struck first. He didn't explain. He didn't negotiate. He just replaced every symbol of Roman's bloodline with his own. When Paul Heyman asked him on air what the plan was, Solo didn't even answer. He just stared, then turned away. Even Heyman, Roman's wise man, looked lost. And that's when it really became clear. Solo wasn't just running operations in Roman's absence. He had taken over. The bloodline wasn't on pause. It had been seized. At this point, fans were split. Some saw Solo as a usurper, a loyal soldier taking too much initiative, stepping out of line. Others saw him as the logical next leader. The one who watched everything fall apart and decided he wasn't going to let it happen again. But WWE wasn't treating this like a temporary fill-in. The production changed. New entrance music. New colors. A new mood. The guerrillas flanked Solo like mercenaries, no nonsense, no smiles. The camera work became more aggressive, the backstage segments more unhinged. It didn't feel like a placeholder bloodline. It felt like a coup. And then came the attacks. First on Kevin Owens. Then on LA Knight. Then on Jimmy USO. Yes, Jimmy, Solo's own brother. That was the moment things went from intriguing to dangerous. Attacking Jimmy wasn't just about sending a message to the locker room. It was a message to Roman. A declaration. Jimmy was the last remnant of Roman's original circle. Taking him out was like cutting the final thread. Jimmy didn't stand a chance. The beatdown was brutal. Chair shots, steel steps, a Samoan spike so violent that even the commentary team went silent. Solo didn't blink. Tama and Loa stood over Jimmy like wolves guarding a kill. And the crowd? They didn't boo. They didn't cheer. They just watched. Because no one knew what this meant. Was this a betrayal? A transformation? Or just the next logical step in a kingdom where only power matters? WWE leaned into the confusion. Commentary danced around Roman's name. Paul Heyman started showing up less. There were no official statements from the tribal chief. No social media posts. No interviews. Roman Reigns, the sun that all these men orbited, was gone. And Solo didn't care. He started calling himself the one left standing. Not in promos, he barely spoke. It was in backstage segments. In the way his crew walked past other superstars without flinching. In the way referees looked nervous when he entered the ring. He didn't need to scream about dominance. He just existed in it. But not everyone was intimidated. Some saw Solo's rise not as a power play, but a sacrilege. Enter Jacob Fatu. A monster by design. A storm in human form. If Solo was ice, Jacob was fire. He didn't come with an army. He didn't come with a promo package or a slow introduction. He came with fists, violence, and a wildness that hadn't been seen in WWE since prime Brock Lesnar. Jacob wasn't reacting to Solo. He was answering a call, an unspoken one. Because while Solo was claiming the bloodline name, Jacob was defending what it meant. Solo, for all his power, had never earned it. He had been installed, first by Roman, then by Chaos. But Jacob? Jacob lived in the trenches. He fought in independent circuits, earned his respect city by city. He didn't inherit the legacy. He bled for it. When Jacob finally confronted Solo, it wasn't in a big pay-per-view moment. It was backstage. Guerrilla position. A glance. A nod. Then fists. The security couldn't contain them. The camera footage was grainy, handheld. But it was real. You could feel the hatred. Solo's version of the bloodline had just met its first real threat. But the story didn't stop there. Because from the shadows came another. Zilla Fatu. The son of Umaga. A man with legacy in his DNA and something to prove. For months, fans had speculated if Zilla would ever step foot in a WWE ring. He'd trained. He'd hinted. But he stayed quiet. Until now. And when he arrived, it was like dropping a lit match in a room full of gasoline. Zilla didn't align with Solo. He didn't acknowledge him. He didn't even speak. He ran into the ring, cleared house, and stood beside Jacob. And just like that, the battlefield was set. Solo Sikoa may have built his own version of the bloodline. He may have moved quickly and struck hard. But in doing so, he awakened enemies he wasn't prepared for. He thought he was claiming a throne. He didn't realize he was starting a war. Jacob Fatu doesn't walk into a room. He storms in. Like a broken siren in human form, flashing rage, no warning, and all destruction. In a world where every wrestler tries to sell intensity, Jacob Fatu simply is intense. He doesn't cut promos to convince you. He doesn't need pyro or catchphrases. He walks, and you feel the air shift. He moves, and everything else looks slow. He swings, and people duck, even backstage. That's the man WWE just unleashed into the chaos of the fractured bloodline. But Jacob didn't show up out of nowhere. He's been waiting. For years, Jacob Fatu terrorized the independent scene, most notably in Major League Wrestling, MLW. Not just dominating, but redefining what a heavyweight could be. Agile. Vicious. Fast. A 280-pounder with the speed of a cruiserweight and the brutality of a brawler. His MLW World Championship reign lasted 819 days. Let that number settle in. That's more than 2 full years of wrecking everyone they put in front of him. And that wasn't a fluke. Jacob made it impossible to ignore him. Every match felt like a fight for survival. Every promo was unfiltered emotion. No script. No pandering. Just straight fire. So why did it take WWE so long to bring him in? Some say he was too real. His energy was too raw. His past too complicated. WWE is a machine. It prefers control. Jacob Fatu doesn't do control. He does chaos. But things changed. Roman's absence opened a gap. Solo's ambition opened another. And Jacob saw the opportunity. Not for a title. Not for a paycheck. But for a reckoning. Because while everyone else was fighting for position, Jacob was fighting for meaning. He wasn't here to play tribal politics. He was here to remind everyone what the bloodline stood for in the first place: pain, power, and family that can't be bought or borrowed. His debut was unannounced. No graphics. No theme song. Just impact. Solo and the Gorillas of Destiny were mid-beatdown on LA Night. Standard intimidation. Nothing new. Then the lights flickered. Not blackout. Just stutter. The kind of flicker that tells you something's wrong. Jacob Fatu didn't come down the ramp. He came through the crowd. Black hoodie. No words. Just a scream and a tackle that sent Tomatonga flying. It was like a lion leaping on prey. No wasted movement. No dramatic pause. He cleared the ring in seconds. Solo stood across from him, breathing heavily, expression locked. For a moment, the crowd forgot to chant. It was just silence. And then it erupted. Because in that moment, they knew, Jacob Fatu wasn't here for a match. He was here for a throne. From that moment on, the narrative shifted. This wasn't just about Solo claiming power. It was about someone else taking it back. What makes Jacob so dangerous is that he doesn't need the bloodline. He doesn't need validation. He doesn't need to be crowned the new tribal chief. He doesn't even care about the name. He just knows who he is, and if you don't, he'll make sure you remember. And it's that indifference to status that makes him terrifying. WWE leaned into it hard. Jacob didn't get backstage interviews. He didn't speak on mic. He just kept showing up and wrecking people. Week after week. Security guards. Enhancement talent. Random mid-carders. If you were near the ring when Jacob arrived, you were in danger. But it wasn't random. Jacob wasn't there to cause chaos for fun. He was marking territory. Every time he took someone out, he was making a point. I'm here. I'm not scared of Solo. And I'm not waiting for Roman. Backstage segments showed the cracks forming fast. Paul Heyman looked haunted. Not worried. Haunted. He knew who Jacob was. He knew what he represented. Not a challenge. A problem. Solo, meanwhile, grew colder. Less smiles. Less emotion. More brutal finishes. He started ending matches with extra damage, post-match chair shots, relentless Samoan spikes. It was as if he knew he needed to send a message. Not just to the roster. To Jacob. But Jacob never blinked. And he never fought Solo directly. Not yet. He circled him. Interrupted matches. Attacked lieutenants. Left messages. One week, he left a blood-stained Samoan necklace in Solo's locker. Another, he left a steel chair bent into a tribal symbol backstage. No words. Just war paint. The fans picked up on it immediately. This wasn't just a feud. This was generational. This was personal. Jacob represents the lineage Roman built, but without Roman's control. He's everything Roman tried to suppress in Solo. The rage. The unpredictability. The independence. Jacob is the bloodline's raw form, stripped of structure, stripped of ceremony. And the crowd started to shift. At first, they didn't know what to make of him. He didn't fit the typical WWE mold. He didn't seek applause. But week after week, the respect grew. People stopped asking who's he aligned with, and started saying, he doesn't need anyone. And then, just as Solo was about to corner him, Jacob made his biggest move yet. He brought family. Zilla Fatu. The son of Umaga. The second earthquake in the making. Jacob didn't introduce him. Didn't hype him. He just stepped back and let Zilla explode onto the scene. In one moment, Jacob went from lone wolf to leader. And not because he needed help. But because he knew what was coming. Solo had a crew. Now Jacob did too. But make no mistake, Jacob is still the alpha. Zilla may be his blood, but Jacob is the hammer. He sets the tone. He leads the charge. In promos, when he finally spoke, Jacob didn't yell. He stared into the camera and said, Solo thinks he took something. But you can't steal what was never yours. That's Jacob in a sentence. Cold. Final. Absolute. The next week, he confronted Paul Heyman. Heyman tried to deflect. Tried to play diplomat. He called Jacob young tribal energy, whatever that meant. Jacob didn't flinch. He whispered 2 words, tell him. Heyman nodded. Walked away like a man who had just been told the wolves are at the door. Jacob Fatu is not Roman Reigns. He's not Solo Sikoa. He's something else entirely. Not a king. Not a prince. A warlord. And the kingdom has never been more vulnerable. If you blinked, you missed the moment he arrived. That's how Zilla Fatu made his mark. Not with a drawn-out debut, not with social media hype, not with a backstage tease. He didn't ask for a camera. He kicked in the door and took the spotlight. The son of Umaga returned to Raw in the most violent, calculated, unforgettable way possible. Not as a footnote in someone else's story. Not as a promising rookie. Zilla Fatu came back as a statement. And he made that statement with fists, fury, and one perfectly timed Samoan spike that left Solo Sikoa stunned. Let's rewind. It was the main event segment. Jacob Fatu stood in the ring surrounded by Solo Sikoa's faction, Tama Tonga, Tonga Loa, and Sikoa himself. 3-on-1. Not a match. A message. Solo's version of the Bloodline had been asserting dominance week after week, using numbers, sneak attacks, and intimidation. This was going to be the same. A slow beatdown. Humiliation on live television. But Jacob didn't flinch. He stood tall, defiant, daring them to take their shot. And then, it happened. The lights didn't go out. The music didn't hit immediately. What broke the moment was the crowd, an audible gasp before anything played. People knew. Somehow, they knew. Then the Titantron lit up. No name. No entrance video. Just fire. Black and red flames. A pulsing drumbeat. And a remix of a theme the WWE hadn't played in over a decade. Umaga's War Rhythm. Updated. Modernized. Heavier. And then he appeared. Zilla Fatu. Broad-shouldered. Eyes locked forward. A tattooed silhouette of defiance. He didn't smile. He didn't pose. He didn't waste time. He ran. Down the ramp like a freight train, sliding into the ring and exploding instantly. First was Tonga Loa, eating a spinning elbow and crashing into the ropes. Then Tama Tonga, blindsided by a savage dropkick. Zilla hit the ropes, launched into a leaping headbutt, and then delivered the moment that sent a shiver through the entire arena. He turned to Solo Sikoa. No hesitation. Samoan spike. Clean. Violent. Direct to the throat. Solo staggered backward, mouth open, eyes wide, not just in pain, but in shock. No one had caught him like that. Not since Roman left. Not ever. He rolled out of the ring. Zilla turned. Jacob stood there, smiling, not surprised, not shocked. Just satisfied. They nodded. Nothing said. Just blood understanding blood. This was the moment the world realized Jacob wasn't alone anymore. And Solo wasn't untouchable. Zilla Fatu had arrived. And he picked a side. But this wasn't just a dramatic entrance. It was the beginning of something deeper. To understand why Zilla's arrival matters, you have to know his legacy. He's the son of Edward Fatu, better known as Umaga. Umaga wasn't just a monster heel. He was chaos wrapped in flesh. He destroyed everything in his path with unmatched intensity. He didn't talk. He didn't smile. He mauled. He redefined brutality in WWE's ruthless aggression era. Matches against Cena, Triple H, Jeff Hardy, they were all classics. Not because Umaga won every time, but because he made you believe. Zilla grew up in the shadow of that power. And for years, he stayed quiet. He didn't rush into WWE like other second-generation wrestlers. He didn't chase clout on Twitter. He trained. He worked in silence. He joined Booker T's Reality of Wrestling promotion, where he learned to wrestle like a pro, not like a legacy kid. And when he finally broke onto the scene, he brought more than family pride. He brought pain. Zilla's in-ring style is a hybrid. He has the explosive brutality of his father, the spikes, the savage strikes, but with a faster pace and sharper counters. He's not just power. He's precision. He uses unpredictability the way others use finishers. What makes him dangerous isn't just that he's physically gifted. It's that he walks into every room like he belongs there. Not because of entitlement, but because he's already calculated how to wreck it. And now he's aligned with Jacob Fatu. 2 branches of the family tree. 1 mission. To reclaim the legacy Solo Sikoa hijacked. In the weeks following his debut, Zilla made it clear he wasn't just Jacob's backup. He was his own weapon. He attacked Tama Tonga backstage. Beat him senseless in a steel cage during a non-televised event. At one point, he grabbed a camera and pointed it directly at Solo. "You're next." Not flashy. Not loud. Just cold. WWE leaned in. Zilla's promos weren't traditional. They were short, almost documentary-style vignettes. Grainy. Dark. Him training alone in a warehouse. Him dragging weights across concrete. Him watching footage of Umaga's greatest hits on a projector. Not one word spoken. And then, finally, he did speak. Just once. "My father built a legacy in blood. And Solo thinks he can steal that name without paying the price? Nah. We're gonna take it back." That's it. One line. And it hit like a brick. From there, Zilla began wrestling in tag matches with Jacob, ripping through local talent, then going head-to-head with Solo's foot soldiers. The chemistry was instant. Jacob brings the wildfire. Zilla brings the dagger. One wreaks havoc. The other ends it. Together, they're more than a team. They're a warning. And Solo knows it. His next few appearances were different. Tense. Quiet. Focused. He didn't respond with a promo. He responded with escalation. He ordered a hit on Jimmy Uso. Yes, his own brother. And he made sure Zilla and Jacob watched from the ramp as Jimmy was stretchered out. That's the level this feud reached. It's no longer about control. It's about erasing the other side completely. Solo sees Zilla as a threat not just because of his lineage, but because of what he represents. Authenticity. Blood earned, not claimed. Zilla didn't inherit the bloodline. He's trying to preserve it. There's one match everyone knows is coming, Zilla vs. Solo. But not yet. Because WWE is building something bigger. They're building two armies. Zilla and Jacob on one side. Solo and the Gorillas on the other. And the prize isn't a title. It's not a main event slot. It's the right to call yourself Bloodline. Zilla's return made that war unavoidable. By this point, the audience wasn't just watching a wrestling storyline. They were watching a civil war unfold in real time. Two factions, two ideologies, and one bloodline torn down the middle. The original bloodline had one purpose: domination under the banner of Roman Reigns. That purpose is gone now. What's left is division, sharp, hostile, and personal. The tribal legacy that once united every Anoa'i family member in WWE is now the source of an all-out war. On one side, Solo Sikoa, cold, silent, militaristic. On the other, Jacob Fatu and Zilla Fatu, raw, emotional, unforgiving. This isn't about a belt. It's about legitimacy. And the feud isn't just heating up. It's consuming everything around it. After Zilla's shocking return and alliance with Jacob, things moved fast. There were no backstage apologies, no locker room handshakes. Jacob and Zilla went straight to work. The first target was Tama Tonga. Tama had been Solo's right hand from the start. Aggressive, loyal, and unpredictable, he fit Solo's vision of what a New Age bloodline should look like. But that also made him the most important person to remove. Jacob and Zilla ambushed him mid-promo. No music. No warning. Zilla slid in behind him, caught him with a chop block, and Jacob followed with a brutal splash that sent Tama through the announce table. They didn't say a word. They stood over him, nodded once, and left. The next week, Solo retaliated. Jacob and Zilla were scheduled for a tag match against enhancement talent. But the match never started. The lights flickered, and when they came back on, Solo and Loa were already in the ring. Chairs in hand. What followed wasn't a match. It was an execution. Loa and Solo used the steel steps like weapons. Jacob bled. Zilla didn't fall easily, but when he did, Solo stood over him, breathing hard, staring into the camera. He mouthed two words, "You sure?" It wasn't a threat. It was a dare. WWE capitalized on the violence with a series of chaotic tag matches, none of which ended clean. Disqualifications. Countouts. Brawls spilling into the crowd. The feud wasn't just escalating, it was devouring every episode it touched. But what made it feel real, what made it feel different, was how personal it became. This wasn't a story of strangers. It was cousins. Blood fighting blood. Paul Heyman, once the mouthpiece for the original Bloodline, started appearing more frequently. Not to talk for Solo, but to plead for calm. But each time he tried to broker peace, he was ignored or shoved aside. He looked less like a wise man and more like a relic from a dead kingdom. Heyman wasn't neutral. He was broken. In one backstage segment, Zilla confronted Heyman. He didn't threaten him. He didn't yell. He just looked him in the eye and said, "You knew this would happen." And then walked away. It was a moment that summed up the entire feud. Inevitable. Heavy. Tragic. Meanwhile, Solo's crew was evolving. Tonga Loa became more aggressive, shedding the cool charisma he once had. He fought like he had something to prove, like being in Solo's version of the Bloodline required constant brutality. No hesitation. No doubt. But cracks began to show. Loa hesitated during a beatdown on Jacob. He looked to Solo for instruction. Solo didn't blink. He nodded once. And Loa finished the job, but his eyes told a different story. Doubt. It's a small detail. One that could mean everything later. On the other side, Jacob and Zilla grew tighter. Their chemistry in the ring was undeniable. They didn't wrestle like cousins. They moved like they'd been fighting together for years. One would open with a strike. The other would follow with a submission. They didn't celebrate victories. They just left. Every week, the attacks grew more creative. One week, Zilla used the announce table monitors to blindside Loa mid-match. The next, Jacob threw Solo through a production crate during a backstage brawl. WWE cameras struggled to keep up. It felt like guerrilla warfare. And that's exactly what it was. This feud wasn't following the usual WWE rhythm. Number 10-minute promos. No scripted segments. Just chaos. And the audience loved it. Chants of Bloodline war started popping up. Signs in the crowd, Jacob is the real one. Zilla's tribe. Solo's army. The locker room took notice. LA Knight, Kevin Owens, even Sami Zayn, guys who had previously clashed with the original Bloodline, started getting involved. Not to join sides, but to survive. Because when Solo or Jacob declared war, no one was safe. Tag matches turned into riots. Main events were hijacked. At one point, WWE had to evacuate the backstage area after an unsanctioned brawl between the two factions spilled into the production truck. That's how deep this feud had gotten. But beneath the chaos was something deeper, philosophy. Solo believes in control. Order through fear. Loyalty through silence. He models his version of the Bloodline like a syndicate. Tight, quiet, brutal. Jacob and Zilla believe in heritage. In raw legacy. They don't fight for power. They fight because they feel like Solo is stealing what doesn't belong to him. And that difference is what's pulling WWE's entire ecosystem into this feud. One night, in a rare backstage sit-down interview, Jacob was asked if he saw himself as a leader. He leaned forward, eyes locked on the camera. "I'm not trying to lead. I'm trying to stop a lie from becoming history." Then he walked out. That line stuck. It trended. It echoed. Because that's what this war really is, a fight to define what the Bloodline means. Is it about dominance? Titles? Control? Or is it about family, earned pain, and the scars that come with it? The answer depends on who survives. The final scene of this chapter came during a Family Rules match on SmackDown, no DQ, no countout, weapons allowed. Jacob and Zilla vs Solo and Loa. It wasn't even billed as the main event. But it stole the show. Steel chairs. Kendo sticks. Blood. At one point, Zilla took a spinebuster through a table and still got up. Jacob hit a diving senton from the top rope onto Solo, through steel steps. But it ended the only way it could. No winner. The match was thrown out when all four men started brawling into the crowd, using barricades, ripping equipment, sending fans running. Security flooded the area. Refs tried to separate them. Nothing worked. The camera cut to black mid-chaos. WWE issued a statement the next morning, suspending all four men for endangering the audience. But everyone knew what that meant. They're building to something bigger. Roman Reigns hasn't wrestled since WrestleMania 40. He hasn't appeared on Raw or SmackDown. No tribal addresses. No interviews. Not even a cryptic tweet. And yet, his presence looms over everything. The feud between Solo Sikoa and the Jacob-Zilla alliance isn't just about who leads the bloodline, it's about who fills the vacuum left by Roman Reigns. And while the war wages on, the silence from the tribal chief becomes more deafening. This isn't a creative oversight. It's intentional. It's strategy. And it's dangerous. Roman Reigns was never just a champion. He was a symbol of dominance, a central figure in WWE's narrative architecture. From 2020 to 2024, he was the story. Every major arc bent toward him, every title match was framed through his presence, even if he wasn't in it. So when he disappeared after losing to Cody Rhodes, the assumption was that he'd be back, eventually. Rested. Recharged. Ready to reclaim the head of the table. But he didn't come back. And now, two factions have emerged in his absence, both using his legacy as a weapon. Solo's camp claims to be the natural evolution, born from Roman's teachings but stripped of sentiment. His is a bloodline based on action, not family. Discipline, not loyalty. And the scary part is, it works. He's gathered allies, established dominance, and made fear his calling card. He doesn't say he's the tribal chief. He just acts like the job was left vacant, and he stepped in. On the other side, Jacob and Zilla are challenging the very idea that the bloodline can exist without Roman's blessing. To them, Solo is a thief. A false prophet. A muscle-bound cousin trying to play king while the real monarch is out of the spotlight. But as this battle escalates, the question remains, where is Roman Reigns? Let's talk about what we do know. WWE hasn't listed any injuries for Roman. No reports of creative disputes. No official timeline. Paul Heyman remains a quiet presence backstage, but even he's been vague when questioned on air. When asked directly by Caleb Braxton whether Roman was returning soon, Heyman simply said, "The tribal chief moves when the island calls him." Cryptic. Vague. And very Roman. There are three major theories circulating within the industry. The first, Roman is simply taking time off, watching from afar, and waiting for the right moment to return. It makes sense. Roman's character has always been about timing. He's not impulsive. He chooses his battles. If you follow this logic, his silence is a calculated move. Let Solo burn himself out. Let Jacob and Zilla climb too fast. And then return when they're both too distracted, and strike. This would align with classic Roman tactics. Let others do the work, then take the glory. It's not cowardice. It's chess. The second theory is more controversial. Roman is done, for now. This view suggests that WWE is intentionally moving away from Reigns to give newer faces time to rise. Solo, Jacob, Zilla, they represent the future. By keeping Roman off TV, WWE creates space. And when he does return, if he returns, it'll be as something bigger than just a leader. Maybe even a villain. Maybe not to restore the bloodline, but to dismantle it entirely. The final theory is the wildest, and possibly the most compelling. Roman Reigns will return not to choose a side, but to reject both. Think about it. Solo has turned the Bloodline into a cold, militaristic crew that lacks the emotional weight Roman once built. Jacob and Zilla, while passionate, are unpredictable. Violent. Almost uncontrollable. Roman sees them both and says, "This isn't what I built. You all forgot who made this sacred." That sets the stage for a three-way civil war. Roman Reigns versus Jacob Fatu versus Solo Sikoa. The father. The usurper. The rebel. It's the kind of storyline WWE thrives on. And it would explain Roman's silence. He's not absent. He's watching. Waiting for them all to cross the line, so he can return and burn the entire thing down. There's precedent. Remember when Roman returned in 2020 at SummerSlam? He didn't walk down the ramp and shake hands. He speared the Fiend and Strowman into oblivion and declared himself champion before the match was even booked. This is how Roman operates. So don't mistake silence for weakness. Backstage reports suggest Roman has been involved in shaping the current Bloodline arc, even if he hasn't appeared. Triple H, now leading creative, is playing the long game. And Roman's absence might be his most brilliant storytelling device yet. Let's talk fan reaction. Theories are everywhere. Reddit threads break down his last promo word for word. TikTok speculate on return dates. YouTube fantasy bookings are flooding the algorithm. Some fans are angry. They want closure. They want Roman to stand in the ring and address the chaos. Others love it. They see the slow build. The tension. The mythology. And that's what this is becoming, mythology. The longer Roman stays silent, the more powerful his return becomes. But here's the risk: if WWE waits too long, Solo and Jacob could burn too bright. If either man builds too much momentum, Roman's return might not land with the same weight. WWE has to time this perfectly. There's one moment fans are waiting for. A stare down. Not a match. Not a beatdown. Just Roman Reigns, standing in the middle of the ring, flanked by Paul Heyman, watching as Solo and Jacob stand on either side of the ring. No words. Just the acknowledgement that he's back, and he's watching. When that happens, the crowd will erupt. Not because of nostalgia, but because the architect has returned to a house on fire. But if Roman chooses not to return at all, if this truly is the end of his story, then what we're watching right now is the fallout of an empire without its emperor. The new bloodline versus the true heirs. Solo Sikoa, trying to prove he never needed Roman. Jacob Fatu and Zilla Fatu, trying to prove that Roman never owned the bloodline to begin with. And in the middle of it all, the audience, holding their breath, waiting for one final chorus of "Acknowledge me." The moment Zilla Fatu delivered that Samoan spike to Solo Sikoa, the seeds were planted. Not just for vengeance. Not just for retaliation. For war. And not just any war. A War Games war. There are rumors. There are whispers. There's tension in every segment WWE airs that involves any member of either faction. And while nothing is officially confirmed, the writing is on the wall. Survivor Series 2025 is likely where the blood feud explodes inside a double steel cage. Let's break it down. WWE revived War Games for the main roster in 2022, and it has since become one of the most anticipated match formats in the company. 2 rings. 1 giant cage. Teams of 4 or 5. No escape. No rules after entry. Just war. The format is tailor-made for faction conflict. And no faction conflict in WWE history has ever felt more personal, more chaotic, or more emotionally charged than the current battle between Solo Sikoa's self-declared bloodline and the counterforce led by Jacob and Zilla Fatu. There are no alliances here. No uneasy partnerships. Everyone involved in this potential Wargames showdown is driven by blood, either to preserve it or to purify it. So what would a Bloodline versus Bloodline Wargames match look like? Start with the sides. Team Solo Sikoa. Solo Sikoa, the cold enforcer turned warlord. Relentless, calculating, driven by control. Tama Tonga, loyal to the cause. Known for his explosiveness and in-ring recklessness. Tonga Loa, power, toughness, and someone who does the dirty work without hesitation. Hikuleo, possibly the X Factor. If WWE pulls the trigger on including another member from the Gorilla's lineage, Hikuleo would round out the team with sheer size and intimidation. This team represents structure. Order. A vision of the Bloodline as a cold syndicate where everyone follows or falls. Team Jacob Fatu, chaos personified. The War General. Unfiltered, unrelenting, and out for legacy, not spotlight. Zilla Fatu, young, angry, and precise. Fighting to defend his father's memory and family truth. Jimmy Uso, the wild card. Recently beaten down by Solo. Could return with vengeance on his mind. His alignment with Jacob and Zilla would be symbolic, choosing truth over power. Zilla Fatu or a returning Uso. If WWE wants to raise the emotional stakes, Jay's return to this war would set the arena on fire. He walked away from the Bloodline once. Coming back to choose sides would be a moment that defines the match, and the feud. In this scenario, we don't just have two teams. We have two ideologies. Solo's side is about control, domination, and seizing the throne Roman left behind. Jacob's side is about blood, honor, and the belief that the Bloodline was never meant to be a dictatorship. The storytelling writes itself. Imagine the entrances. Solo and his crew walk down unified, no emotion, a military unit. Jacob's side comes in uncoordinated but hungry, driven by passion. Each man has a personal vendetta. Each face tells a story of betrayal, memory, and rage. Now imagine the match. Wargames starts with one-on-one combat. WWE could choose Jacob vs. Solo as the opening confrontation. Immediate tension. The crowd on its feet. No tag teams. No alliances. Just two men with everything to prove and no words left to say. Then, the countdown begins. Alternating entries. The advantage, classically held by the heels, in this case, likely Solo's team, gives them the upper hand. Each new entry escalates the violence. Tables. Kendo sticks. A Samoan spike in the middle of the cage. But the turning point would come with the final entrant. Let's say it's Uso. The crowd wouldn't just pop. They'd erupt. Jay walks down that ramp. He pauses. Looks at both sides. History flashes in his eyes. Roman. Jimmy. Solo. Jacob. He's been loyal, broken, rebellious, lost. And now he has to choose. Does he join his brother, the man who Solo tried to erase? Or does he step into the fire with Jacob and Zilla, defending a legacy greater than any one man? That moment alone could headline a pay-per-view. And once Jay enters, the match becomes official. Wargames begins. Now it's chaos. Bodies flying. Cages rattling. Tables shattered. Solo hits a Super Samoan spike off the top rope. Jacob dives between the rings into a spear. Zilla pulls out a strap and whips Loa into the steel like he's trying to erase him.